Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on how to increase revenue throughout the customer journey. We're going to take 2 minutes to wait for all the remaining audience to join the call, but we'll start soon. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on how to increase revenue throughout the customer journey. My name is Rachel Hong. I am the moderator of today's webinar. I'm so excited and glad to have you here joining these industry experts. Let's meet Kyle Christensen, who is the Enterprise Account Director for the Americas at OTA Insight, Stefan Boralowitz, VP of Digital Platforms at TravelTripper and Pegasus, as well as Ryan King, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Stay in Touch. Now, before we go into today's agenda, I want to actually ask you a quick question. In your opinion, which stage is the most important or crucial when it comes to maximizing revenue opportunities? Please select one of the following. Is it pre-booking, booking, or post-booking? Once you select one of the choices, please hit submit. We're going to take about 1 minute to or 30 seconds for everyone to submit their response. This should be quick, so go with your gut instinct. All right, I'm going to close the poll pretty soon. So 10 more seconds. Okay, great. Now moving back along to our presentation. So what can you expect from today's webinar? Well, a lot of great advice on maximizing revenue from booking to staying. First, we're going to have Kyle from OTA Insight, who will reveal the next level revenue strategies for maximizing your pricing and revenue opportunities. Then we will have Stefan from TravelTripper and Pegasus, who will share the ways in which hotels can achieve record direct revenue, personalize the guest journey, and level the playing fields with OTAs. Afterwards, Ryan from Stay in Touch will discuss how to capitalize on ancillary and incremental revenue opportunities during the check-in, check-out process while increasing guest satisfaction. So for the audience on this call, please feel free to submit your questions at any point during the discussion by going to the question section on your panel. And we will collect all your questions throughout the discussion, but we'll answer them during our Q&A session at the end, where we will also reveal the poll result. So, are you ready? Let's get started. First, let's hear from Kyle Christensen. Kyle is Enterprise Account Director for the Americas at OTA Insight. As a hotel technology enthusiast and expert in account management and partner relations, he works closely with global chain hotels to solve challenging business problems and find new opportunities to enhance and optimize their business. Kyle, over to you.
Thanks for that introduction, Rachel. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today on behalf of OTA Insight. Today, I'll be discussing how using data and analytics can help hotels realize their revenue potential through the customer journey. We'll be talking about buying behavior and lead times, data efficiency, leveraging your data, and strategizing instead of analyzing. So you could advance to the next slide. Ultimately, using better data insights to help drive revenue. That's the goal. Big data is a main topic, but the key is to have the right data. Right now is that time that hoteliers should embrace technology to help drive profitability. All successful companies are data-driven companies. And some say, if you don't have data, you're just a person with an opinion. And according to an Accenture study, 79% of enterprise executives agree that companies that do not embrace big data will lose their competitive position and could face extinction. Even more, 83% have pursued big data projects to seize a competitive edge. You can advance to the next slide, please. Buying behavior is crucial. Understanding your guest buying behavior is a crucial element in setting the right expectations to the customers, as it is in all industries. For example, you don't just go to the airport and buy a last-minute ticket. You know that sales happen at the end of the season, so you typically buy at the end of the season or further in advance. If hoteliers drop prices last minute, guests will most likely buy those rooms, but may only have a lead time of 2 days. And it'll be much harder to predict the guest booking behavior. And actually, you may be training the guests to wait to book for a lower rate. And continuing on, let's talk a little bit further about lead times. This chart shows an evolution of competitive rates prior to one specific arrival date. As you can see, a hotel and their competition dropped their rates last minute, essentially becoming a race to the bottom. While many hotels, not all, experience a high percentage of new bookings in the same window, it seems counterintuitive. It raises some questions as to why is this occurring. And you can advance. So talking more about lead time and how proactive identification with your booking data can help optimize your revenue potential. I really like this slide, but specifically for its data, but not necessarily just the data, but how it's visualized and how it can aid in actions. These global travel insights from Sojourn provided amongst all the key markets, the percentage of bookings in the days before arrival buckets show some common themes. For example, while indeed a good percentage of bookings are coming within 14 days of arrival, there's a notable and high percentage of bookings that are actually in that 60+ day window. And you can advance to the next slide. So efficiency is key. So are we efficient? At OTA Insight, we recently conducted a survey and found that according to hoteliers, the highest ranked tech affecting the market in data is data analytics and business intelligence. These tools will highly affect outcomes and will help having a more clear overview of how to segment not only the classic market segments that we're all used to, but also areas such as channels of distribution, length of stay attributes by companies and by travel agencies, just to name a few different ways of segmentation. So some of these other items are kind of buzzwords and hot topics such as artificial intelligence, but according to this survey that we conducted, ultimately business intelligence is still seen as number one. So when you look at hotels, every time you make a booking, you have to go through a process and give all your details. And sometimes you wish that hotels could be more like an Amazon, that you just could click and all your information is there. But guests give a lot of information to the hotels, but often the hotels don't always do it, actionable things with it. All the information is captured, but it's too complex and not actionable. And as a result, we see this analysis paralysis. There's actually no lack of data. There's a lot of data coming at hotels from all different directions. Oftentimes, revenue managers spend considerable amount of time collecting and organizing all these reports from their PMS, CRS, revenue management system, and more. And they put them into a customized Excel spreadsheet that either they've designed or their owner or management company have created. And rather than using the data to put strategies and tactics into action, sometimes the biggest achievement ends up being just putting the report together. So what we need is a more efficient consolidation of data to optimize revenue and ultimately set the right prices to enhance that customer journey. By having simpler reporting and better analytics, it will lead to faster decisions and actions. And by having consolidated data, I would add, this is also going to allow you as a hotel to have repeatable execution of the revenue optimization cycle. So combining internal and external data is essential. So let's talk more about leveraging your data. We look at different variables such as length of stay, day of week, but what are we also doing in terms of what countries your guests are coming from? What countries are of interest to you? Room types. Room types are often overlooked or ignored, and those premium room types are sometimes treated only as upgrades and not actually realizing the revenue potential via upsell or straightaway pricing. And booking window. The booking window of your guests, they all are different, and as is the pickup. One person doesn't always book the same on the same trips. So optimizing your guest segmentation. We know that every penny counts. Traditional market segmentation is good and will always be around, but deeper revenue and booking insights and data can be used to better and more efficiently understand your business segmentation as well as optimize your channel mix and distribution strategies, and ultimately know what customers you want to target. And evaluating your distribution channels, now this is a typical analysis that hotels typically do when evaluating OTAs. Well, almost all over the world, hotels complain about OTAs as a problem due to high commission, which can sometimes be in the neighborhood of 25%. That's a lot of money. But on the other hand, hotels often ignore that direct bookings also come at a cost. In this case, we show OTA number 1 at 10% commission and OTA 2 at 20%. But what does that truly mean? What is the intrinsic value of each of these reservations? In OTA 1, when analyzing the data, you might find that it's actually domestic business that's competing with your brand marketing campaigns. And therefore, there's already a conflict of interest. While you're only paying 10%, this will have a higher negative impact than reservations coming from, say, OTA 2, where you pay 20% commission. As these bookings, you find that are actually coming from international travelers that come on low demand dates and have a higher length of stay. So only looking at the commission level is not the only way of evaluating the value of your distribution channels. I've actually seen and experienced brand direct campaigns that have exceeded OTA commissions due to the high costs of SEO, pay-per-click, or CPC campaigns. It's quite interesting to have a holistic view. Can you advance? So revenue managers should be strategizing instead of analyzing and using KPIs to help drive revenue. So this is the system that we have at OTA Insight, at least a couple of the screenshots. Actually, what it does is visualizes the data. So you can click on different reports and you can look at transient only, for example, and automatically all the data will pivot to the transient only. This is an amazing time saver of all of that work that was done collating and collecting the different data sources into one easy to use interface. And you'll be able to see room types, your ADR, your room revenue, all those standard KPIs to really dive into the data if you want to look at specific segment or maybe a transient business in your premium room type coming from Expedia, for example. So putting these filters in place allows you as the hotel to get actionable data right in front of you. So to conclude, what do revenue managers, GMs, and sales managers need? Well, it's the ability to access numbers intuitively with an immediate overview of the types of business mix over a customized period of time versus a reference period.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kyle. Now let's hear from Stefan Boralowitz. Stefan is the VP of Digital Platforms at Travel Tripper and Pegasus, where he oversees the website and digital marketing services for hotel customers. A pioneer in all things web and mobile, Stefan has spent more than 20 years in online services and technology. He was formerly founder of BlueChain.io, a website platform acquired by Travel Tripper in 2015. Stefan, please walk us through your presentation.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Hello, everyone. Really excited to be here today. Looking forward to sharing some perspective and best practices and innovations that I think you'll find extremely helpful around the topic of achieving record direct revenue, how to personalize your customer journey, and how to level the playing field as it relates to your distribution channels. So just to start with, I always think it's a good idea to really think about your guest and their guest journey as a sort of an anchor or foundation, a lens through which you can view pretty much everything you're doing as it relates to your direct revenue and achieving the results that you want. So we know that today's guests are more demanding than ever, and that you're constantly competing to ensure that you're providing a great price and a great experience for that guest throughout. If we proceed, Rachel, thanks, to the next slide. One of the things I also like to say is that independent hotels and small to medium-sized brands are often at a disadvantage. And the disadvantage that you have is that the OTAs have an extremely effective formula for maximizing their revenue and their commissions from you, and personalizing the journey for that guest that we were just talking about in a way that creates incredible convenience for them. So I like to joke that it's for the OTAs, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and the party is going strong, and it doesn't look like there's any end in sight. So this is the OTA party, and that party is fueled by commissions. So moving on, what about us? What about independent hotels and small to medium-sized brands? Well, the party is not going so well as it relates to direct revenue. We're constantly in a battle to achieve higher direct revenue, and we are often finding ourselves challenged to provide the kind of convenience and ease of use that the OTAs are able to provide. Just to give you one example, imagine the difference of using an OTA app like a Booking.com or an Expedia, where the moment you open the app, that OTA knows who you are, your booking history. You don't need to log in. Your credit card is saved, and loyalty is fully integrated. So there's a tremendous advantage that OTAs have across the board, but not just in their marketing dollars, which we often hear about, but also in digital experience. So let's continue to elaborate, and I hate to do this, and I'm sorry to share, but the problems continue in terms of the challenges that hotels face. And the next challenge I'd like to talk about is specifically related to your web experience. And here I also like to joke that unfortunately, a lot of hotel websites are might as well be printed on paper. They might as well be brochureware. And the reason is you're sort of encountering the opposite problem that I just talked about with the OTAs. Unfortunately, websites aren't aware of guest history and aren't aware of prices, and in many cases do not have access to information that can immediately and materially transform the digital experience into something that's relevant and easy to use. So more specifically, what I mean by this is that websites and the booking engines that are connected to them are very often completely divided. In other words, the websites themselves are on different platforms and often don't have access to the same kind of data that is accessible to the booking engines that that they link to. So this is a very, very strange thing. If you take a step back and you think about the e-commerce industry, which we all interact with in many different facets, whether it's buying, an airline ticket or it's purchasing something on Amazon.com. How strange would it be if you went to Amazon.com and you were able to see pictures like on a website for hotels, but you didn't have prices? And that when you were ready to buy a product on Amazon, you had to go to some separate e-commerce engine in order to actually find the prices for the products that you've seen. And that's what we're facing in the hotel industry. So we've got this very strange dividing line between these static websites. So how do we tackle this? So I'm going to mention sort of there are three important things to be able to tackle this challenge. And in terms of best practices and recommendations for those of you on the call, I'm going to make three recommendations, and that is choose partners and vendors where you will you can feel confident that you're going to get transparency around the data that you're providing to them by working with them, and through that, hopefully you can build trust and then take advantage of innovation that they may be able to bring to you. With regard to transparency, these are your properties, your customers, and your data. So make sure as you're contracting with vendors and finding partners that you're able to see that very clearly in your contracts, and that you're dealing with partners and technology vendors that understand that these are your customers and your data, and that's very explicitly laid out. So obviously that builds trust, right? So until you know that you're able to own your data and your customers, how is it that you're able to trust the folks that you're working with? So at Travel Tripper Pegasus, we believe that this is a very important element of all of our customer relationships. And regardless of whether you're working with us or working with others, I think there's a need in the hotel industry, and it should be driven by you, to require that from your vendors and ensure that your partners with whom you're working are giving you that level of transparency that is then building trust. And then lastly, innovation. One of the things that's fascinating about travel technology, and I'm sure we're all aware of this, is how incredibly quickly it's moving. And from one year to another, even over one quarter to another, we're seeing a constant level of innovation. And I think more than anything else, that is what motivates us. I like to joke at Pegasus Travel Tripper, DNA, it's in our DNA. Innovation is in our DNA. And so looking out at best practices, regardless of, as I said, if you're working with us or someone else, I think it's incredibly important that we all stay on top of that as you look out there and you determine who you're going to be working with. So now transitioning to putting this into action, assuming that you're working with partners that are giving you transparency, with whom you have trust, and that you're getting innovation, what can you do? And we have a point of view in our organization about how we can help you achieve record direct revenue and personalize the journey and level the playing field. And there may be technologies similar to this, but we consider this now what I would call leading industry practices, or practices that go beyond best practices to what I would call industry leading. So let's start by talking about leveling the playing field. And it's in this area that we have something very, very unique and very powerful. And it's in the category of direct booking solutions. So I'm sure you're all familiar with companies like Triptease and Hotels Network and Hotel Champ. These provide some very, very good products. But relative to what we believe is what I would call industry leading, there are very defined boundaries beyond which, in essence, I like to joke they're in a data desert island. So they often look at behavior, and they have some access to intelligence around competitive pricing. But beyond that, they end up, as I said, in what I would consider the data desert island, because beyond those borders, they have very, very little capability to actually affect conversion rates using information that can truly personalize the guest journey with your data, your customers, once again, getting back to the customer data that you have access to. So if we can move on, Rachel. So one of the technologies we've developed, which is patent pending, which I'm sure you're going to find very much of interest, is a technology called Rate Match. And this is a technology that takes the next step beyond what you may be familiar with from some of these direct booking solution providers, where you can display a hotel, your hotel rates on OTAs. And what Rate Match does, in effect, is in real time, at the time that a guest arrives on your booking engine, it is able to do a real-time search for your hotel price, and this is the part that's very different and extremely innovative and patent pending, is that we are then able to match on the fly and create a rate on the fly if we discover an OTA is $5 or $10 cheaper than Hotel Direct. So this is a very, very powerful feature that can transform your ability to compete precisely when you need these direct booking solutions to be available to you in order to match rates. Because in a case where an OTA might be $5 cheaper, most of those direct booking solutions actually disappear from your site because they don't have the ability to create a rate on the fly. And that's an extremely powerful and very exciting element of Rate Match. So let's move to the next slide, Rachel. And in effect, what I'm describing here is, sort of how it works, which is a real-time search. If we discover a rate that's out of parity, we create a rate on the fly. So let's move to the next slide, Rachel, and just keep things going. Just to show how it looks, here is an example where we might have looked at some rates, created a rate on the fly because we might have found a rate that was $5 cheaper than your hotel. Okay, let's keep moving. And when this situation happens, we can present a mini single-page booking experience to book the reservation. Okay, so moving to the next step. Well, what about the web experience? So we talked about the booking engine, and there's a very interesting and innovative technology that's unique in the industry called Rate Match that can enable you, in cases where your Hotel Direct rate is more expensive than an OTA, to match those rates on the fly. Well, we can also display that on the website. We have a product called Conversion Plus. Similarly, direct booking solution providers out there that you may have seen have products like this. The thing that's quite different about our product, once again, is that these third parties generally tend to try to increase your direct bookings by leveraging something like an exit intent or an idle time on page and dropping your rates. I'm sure you've seen it, and I like to joke, if you sneeze while you're holding a mouse and you're on some of these websites, all of a sudden the technology thinks you have an exit intent, that you're trying to move away from the site, and boom, all of a sudden you're looking at 15% off. What we've been able to prove with Rate Match and Conversion Plus is that we can achieve higher conversion rates than some of these competitive direct booking solutions, and we can do it with the rates you have within the limits of some very tight thresholds, such that if the OTAs are $3 or $4 less than you, we're able to match that on the fly and achieve the high conversion rates that you need without needing to drop your rates automatically down 15% with some default offer just because someone moved their mouse in the wrong direction. So let's proceed, Rachel, and let's go all the way to looking at the booking calendar, which is a couple slides forward. These are other technologies that start to bring, and let's go one slide back, thanks, Rachel, start to bring rates into the web experience. And I summarize this by saying the transition that you're looking to achieve here is moving beyond what I call a hotel website to hotel e-commerce. So if you're still in that brochureware phase where your website is mostly, and it may very well be very beautiful website and a responsive website, but if your website is mostly pretty pictures and content but doesn't have transactional information, your website isn't aware of the guest name and whether they've stayed with you before and what the price of the hotel is, and it isn't able to invite the guest to understand your hotel price before they continue on the hotel on the booking journey, then we think that that is passé. That is a website that is not transactional in e-commerce, and we would encourage you to start thinking about moving beyond hotel websites to hotel e-commerce. If we go one slide forward, you'll see what this looks like, and you'll understand the meaning of this if you look at a rooms page that has multi-room listing on your website, and you can actually see relative pricing, which, as I'm sure you can understand, is extremely powerful. So let's go a couple slides forward to the slide with the orange arrows, Rachel. And here, what I'd like to remind you as we transition from talking about innovative technologies and transitioning from being able to match rates on the fly and level the playing field with the OTAs to make sure that if they're $5 cheaper, you can match their rates. As you think about transitioning from a hotel website to hotel e-commerce, I'd like to now also talk about the last topic, which is teamwork. And the fact is that there's this symbiotic relationship that as we move beyond just hotel website technology or booking technology, between marketing, quality of service in the operations team of your hotel, and the reputation that you build. And of course, none of this happens in isolation, right? So if you're not met with a smile at the front desk, if your rooms aren't, in super great shape and recently renovated, and if the experience of staying in your hotel isn't driving great reviews, then we're not looking at the whole picture. So I like to think about this as a radar graph where you really need to be thinking about the complete picture. So e-commerce is not the single panacea that's going to solve every problem, and that if in essence what we need to be thinking about as hoteliers is being outstanding in every aspect of what we do, from the moment someone walks in the door, and we're going to hear from Stay in Touch about how we can transform the guest experience. This is incredibly important because we can't just move one element and expect that we're going to move the needle on direct revenue and increasing hotel profits. So I'll leave you with the final thought, which is thinking beyond technology. We always have to remember that that common sense is more important than technology, or as I like to also joke, maybe human intelligence is more important than artificial intelligence. And we've seen this many times where we might put a technology in place, but unless we're actually taking a step back and thinking about the guest experience, we know we're not going to be able to get the results that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you so
thanks,
much.
and yeah, we'll return later to Q&A, but back over to you, Rachel. Thanks.
Thank you, Stefan, for sharing that. Now I'm going to pass over the microphone to Ryan King. So Ryan,
Great.
hi, Ryan. So Ryan is a former hotelier with almost 20 years of experience that has spanned just about every department through the course of his hotel career. He has a love for technology that helps him discover new methods enabling hoteliers to better engage their guests, thereby increasing revenues through better service and marketing. He now spends his time working with other hospitality technology companies to help strengthen the Stay in Touch ecosystem in order to provide a world-class offering to all of the Stay in Touch clients. Now that's here from Ryan. Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. All right, so I think one of the things as we've gone through this, we've talked about analyzing data, we've talked about how to capture this guest, and now what we really want to do is make sure we're capturing total RevPAR and understanding where these spots are to capture a little extra revenue. So go ahead to the next slide, Rachel. As we do that, we need to back up just for a moment and realize that, as Stefan was talking about this at the end, is what's the guest experience? And really, if you think about the hospitality industry, we've been lagging just a little bit behind the other industries, and we're now starting to catch up, and we're aware that mobile is the future. Mobile is the way that our guests are interacting with us. So many people are shopping on their phones. Self-service, as a word that we talk around, the airline industry really kind of pioneered that for the hospitality industry. And how we present choice and convenience and the way for a guest to customize that is going to be the way that the guests come and engage with us to do different things while they're on the property. So in order to really get this home, if you go to the next slide, Rachel, you have to think about the fact that the consumers that we're dealing with want to be able to interact with us in a mobile manner. They've done this during their shopping process on their phone. They've done this, with looking and booking on their mobile phone. Now they're entering the hotel. What choice do we give them? Because these travelers are different people. There's your road warrior that just wants to get in and out. There's your vacationers that want to embrace everything. There's your booming senior market that wants to, chat and hear everything from a person. So think about what that experience is. If you go to the next slide, Rachel. Great. When you want to capture additional revenue from someone, you have to do it where they want to do it at. Retailers have understood this for decades. How many of you have gone up to the cash register at Walgreens or at CVS and there's gum and candy bars and a little thing to plug in for your cigarette lighter to power your phone, or there's a little extra cord? These are all little things that they've studied, and they've said, oh, the propensity for someone to buy this at the register has increased by this amount, and we're watching these items. So we've got to do that in the same way. When I was in the hotel, we commissioned the front desk staff to try and get them to sell the person to a upgraded room level. And we had, a limited amount of success because we had some people that were very interested. But what we were really missing is all these people that had desires and that had needs that we didn't get there. If I'm getting on a plane today to check into my hotel tomorrow, and I know that I am landing at 10:30 a.m. and I have a meeting at 1 p.m., if you send me a message on my phone to check in right along with my airline ticket, and it says that I can guarantee my arrival into the hotel by 11 a.m. for an extra 20 bucks, I'm gonna buy it because it's convenient, it puts me in control, and it allows me to be comfortable with the fact that I'm gonna be able to go to the hotel, take a quick shower, change my clothes, and go off to my meeting. So these are things that have to go with that mobile guest experience. This is what's going to empower your guest for different choice and different convenience options that you give them. This is technology that has now been rolled out to the independent hotel world and is becoming adopted by various hotels in various different climates. I think in North America, where we sit currently, at least on this webinar, we are a little more, I think, reticent to, adopt some of these technologies. In Europe, we see this just really taking off right now. We have some hotels that are funneling over 70% of their arrivals through some type of self-service enablement. And this is really where it changes some of the things, because they're seeing people that are, doing upgrades the day before. They're checking in a little bit early. They're using their phone to check out. It's decreasing that transactional relationship that the hotels had to have. If you go to the next slide, this is where, it's enabling the staff to kind of cater a little more to different people's whims. Think about the fact that if you get rid of that barrier that's between you and the guest, let's call this the front desk, there's a different way you can interact with the people coming through your hotel. You can stand next to someone and have a conversation. You could swing an iPad around to them and say, oh, we're chatting about things to do in the city. By the way, you're here for 3 days. I see you're in a standard king room. I've got this corner room. It's a little larger. It's got this great view out of these monuments or this really neat area of the city. Would you guys like to upgrade for another $25? That's a very, very powerful upselling technique. You're now relaxed. You're conversing with the guest. You're able to do it. The guests that want to talk to you are going to do that. The ones that want to do them themselves on the phone are going to do it themselves on the phone. This really is this whole thing about mobile interaction. You hear it, you're hearing people talk about it. It's something that's on the buzzword on there. There's technology out there right now to help you do this. We are helping dozens, hundreds actually of hotels do this type of thing. We have hotels making anywhere from $1,000 more a month to, in some larger properties, tens of thousands of dollars more per month in ancillary revenue. And think about the fact that this is now contributing their total RevPAR as well as flowing to the GOP in a much more linear fashion. So if you go to the last slide there, what we really have to do, and I think Kyle kind of talked about this a lot, and then Stefan hit on it too, is we have to think about how we're personalizing the information that we have with the tech that we have, and how the different technologies that we're using can give us a better guest experience. That's who's going to win at the end of the day. You provide a superior guest experience, you're going to reap the rewards. You're going to have a higher occupancy, you're going to have a higher ADR, you're going to have a higher GOP. So all of these things are going to come along with it. So think about how you're going to do that. As a bellwether curve, and somebody that we've seen has done this well, the Aria Casino in Las Vegas, they have around 1,200 arrivals a day. They have now perfected how they're capturing some of this information. We know that OTAs don't give us always the information we want. There's not a phone number or an email for us to message the guest prior to arrival. We know that travel agents don't give us this data either. However, we still have our group folks, we still have our direct bookers, we still have the people calling, we still have the website. So there's a number of people. They're capturing 35 to 40% of these people through a mobile check-in. Imagine if you could take that and get 25 to 35% of your guests going through this and doing some type of upgrade. Well, I can't share Aria's results. I can tell you that this singular hotel adds a 7-digit figure to their bottom line based on small incremental revenues. It's a very powerful statistic. So let that sink in as you think about it. While you don't have their size, scale that back and think about the size of your hotel and what that could do for you. And Rachel, I think if we go to the next slide, we're ready for some Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing that. Also, thanks to all of the panelists for sharing your great advice and strategies. So now it's the Q&A time, but before we take questions from the audience, we actually want to first reveal the result of the poll. So here are, sorry. Excuse my technical glitches. Here are the results from the poll. So actually, I would say the majority of the audience think that the most important stage for maximizing revenue opportunities is pre-booking, followed by post-booking, and booking isn't the most important stage. So now I actually want to open the floor to the panelists. I would like to challenge you to respond to that question, but please keep your response to 30 seconds. Like, which stage do you think is the most important? Maybe we should start with Kyle and go that way.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I tend to agree with this poll on the pre-booking. I think is critical component to the guest journey. I think it sets the foundation. It builds the credibility of the hotel, whether it's pricing and parity, but also as lookers become bookers, it sets the value of the property as well. If price was the only thing that mattered, the price would never be low enough. So I think setting that foundation in the beginning, in the pre-booking phase, and analyzing your revenue to target those customers, I would agree with these poll figures.
And what do you think, Stefan?
I agree. Pre-booking is really where it's at. I think it's during the pre-booking stage where prospective guests are evaluating their options, both in terms of where they want to stay, so looking at the hotel competitively within a comp set, as well as how they want to book. And so, I think I think the most effective place is upstream in the pre-booking phase.
Yeah, and Stefan, I'm going to agree with you on that. I think you illustrated it very eloquently in talking about a few things. It's more about how are you merchandising your property? What have you done to cleverly get people to feel good about their choices? And Stefan, you showed some great things when they're looking at the room pictures, having those prices there. That's a part of you merchandising those different room types and thinking about, what is it that you put together to get someone, off of the OTA into your property, and being able to recognize that they've hit the website before and them seeing the rates. All of these little things, they help kind of bring that customer in.
Yeah, but and I'd like to add one other thing while we're talking about this, because I think it's such an interesting topic, and it reminds me of this Latin saying that I used to have on the wall of my office, which is nullum gratuitum prandium. And it's kind of a funny saying, actually. It means there is no free lunch. And I think, unfortunately, the more nuanced answer, and I think the correct answer, and I alluded to this later, and I think it led perfectly into the message from Stay in Touch, which is actually we need to be great across the board. The answer is not, oh, let's focus on pre-booking, because most people in the poll agree that pre-booking is where it's at. Well, actually, what we really need to do is, without compromise, we need to provide outstanding experiences throughout the entire experience of pre-booking, booking, and the guest experience, because that's really the way you're going to move the needle long term.
Yeah. Does someone else want to say something, or are we good? Cool. So thanks for sharing all your thoughts. I thought that's really great. And now we're off to a more controversial question, again, posing that to our panelists here. In your opinion, should hotels have secret rates? Let's start with Ryan this time.
What a great question. I actually am 100% for the hotel having this secret rate or member rate, or however you want to call it nowadays. I think it has to be something, that you're offering to the guest that's exclusive. Why would they want to book with you directly? We talked about it before. The OTAs have all this information and they say, oh, you should do this, and this is why they want you to book through us. But if you go to the hotel website and you're able to save 10% because there's a secret rate that you unmask, by putting your information in, that's a compelling offer, for someone to say, oh, look, they're being nice to me.
Okay, Stefan?
So, it's interesting. I think that there are some people who believe that this notion that there's arbitrage in the hotel industry is over, and I completely disagree. And what I mean by that is, you have this point of view, which is, oh, you know what, we're all connected. The CRS distributes the rates, it goes out to all the OTAs, you've got Hotel Direct, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is that each of these channels, the entire distribution network for hotels, they are actually motivated and rewarded by creating rate differentiation or rate advantage. So whether it's witting or unwitting, when an OTA is out of parity because of a caching problem or some other, sort of reason that may cause them to be out of parity, they gain advantage. And so from a revenue management perspective, there's tremendous advantage to creating segmented rates, so that, obviously going from the most basic, corporate rates and insider rates for loyalty programs and, value adds, all the way through the idea of segmenting pricing based on how someone is booking or where they are. Are they on mobile? Is it an international booker? There is so much to be gained by thinking about segmenting your rates according to the user and guest experience and guest relationship with the hotel.
Yeah, I think we talked about segmentation throughout this presentation. And what do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I think the common thing is, everybody wants a discount. Everybody wants to feel like they've got the best rate and it's been exclusive to you as a guest. And I think there's something to be said about that. I think that can drive some really positive things, building loyalty with the traveler and the guest staying in your hotel. But I think it all stems, but there's a lot of risk associated too with that. I mean, you run the risk of a bad guest experience with, talking to their friend that also booked via a different way, that classic example of things. So I think the key thing is, just, actions that are based off of data and analytics with a clear purpose and a clear strategy that can be adjusted on the fly if need be, and turned off and turned on, will have good results. If it's, slapped together pretty quick without clear intent, I think hotels will face some of those associated risks. So I think, decisions based off of facts and data is always a good foundational step.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kyle. Now I want to open the floor to questions from the audience. Got a really interesting response to the presenting comment was, these are all very interesting topics, but it looks to me that all these sophisticated options only apply to middle to big size properties. What do you guys think?
This is Ryan. I mean, I would say that, you have to look at the resources you have available, right? And you have to decide what your tech stack is going to look like. If you have a 25-room hotel, then you really have to decide, what are my challenges and what do I need to do? If I have a high occupancy all the time without having to really try harder, then I'm going to work on how am I better merchandising my room types, as well as how am I capturing additional revenue. If I'm a 100-room hotel in an extremely competitive city market, you have to start looking at, hey, what is the competitive landscape? What tools do I need to assess that more? And how do I differentiate myself? I think it's very, very important for the hotels to ask themselves some questions and then decide what their budget is to spend on some of these technology tools. The last hotel I was in, we were 150 rooms, and we had to certainly pick and choose very carefully. We couldn't go wild, but we also knew, as we did certain things on what we spent our money on brought back the highest return on investment.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. And I think this might also be a question for you too, is are guests open to using apps to order services or raise requests? Are they okay to receive promotions on this app from hotels to upsell services?
Well, the simple answer on this one is yes. So we've gotten a couple different studies that are coming with information. Skift put out beginning of the year their mega trends this year, and there's a whole thing around this, upselling and offering deals and things of that nature. And the millennials want everything on their phone, and that's how they purchase this information. They are not, if you talk to them face to face, they're not going to do it. But if you give them an app and they can sit there and let's say they can order on the app, a bucket of beers before they get in there, or they can sit there and pre-order, bikes, or they can upgrade their room, or they can do whatever. It allows them to digest it in the way that they want to. And we're finding this is more common nowadays with business travelers, which is then bled into, the vacationers. And I said, we use Europe as kind of our bellwether curve. Their adoption of these type of technologies has been at a much more rapid pace than we've seen here in North America. But we already have some hotels that have their complete ordering and servicing on the phone. You want something, the hotel sends a message via text when you check in. Hey, let us know if you need anything. You want towels? Great, we'll send them to you. You want a burger? Great, what kind? How do you want it cooked? Okay, thanks, we'll send it. It's all through these applications.
Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. Lastly, this is a question for Stefan. The person named Manny asked, when will Travel Tripper support Apple Pay on the mobile booking engine?
I guess the short answer is as soon as possible. I think this is a big priority for us, and I'm a huge advocate of rolling out a digital wallet. This is something that we're very interested in at Travel Tripper Pegasus, and it's something that we're working on. So I can't unfortunately publicly commit to a release, but you should know that this has our full attention. And speaking, personally, I'm incredibly excited about this, and something that I'm very actively working on within the organization. I think it's worth and relevant to mention that I believe this is going to be a game changer for hotel web competitiveness versus OTAs, for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. When you offer a booking using a digital wallet, you can take a mobile booking experience, which today is really, really difficult, and you make it incredibly easy. And what I think we're going to see in the hotel industry is that we're going to break through the ceiling that we've reached in mobile bookings that across the industry has been extremely hard to exceed. And that ceiling is kind of in the range of, let's say, 20% mobile bookings, whereas OTAs enjoy greater, let's say around 50 or greater than 50% mobile bookings. So this is it's going to be a game changer, and digital wallets are going to kind of lead that revolution, and it's very important to our organization.
Certainly, I look forward to the next stage of innovation on all fronts. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for your input. I really learned a lot from you today, and special thanks to our audience for tuning in. As you may know, we will share a recording of this webinar within 24 hours. But in the meantime, feel free to email any question to info@stayintouch.com. Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you again in our future webinars.